the Global Affairs correspondent at The Eye. Thanks so much for joining us this Saturday. It's been great having your company. Wanted to kick off with the front page of The Guardian, Molly. Britain facing a new era of security threat. What does this include?
It's really talking about the technological side of the threat. It's specifying drones and AI in particular. And I think drones are causing a particular headache, not only in the UK defence world, but really across NATO. Drones have sort of been revolutionising warfare in Ukraine. They're sort of ever present in the skies there. And Ukrainian soldiers telling me they can't really even go out of a trench during daytime because the surveillance is so high. So drones can be used not only for spying on positions and collecting sort of targeting information, but also to launch attacks. Some are basically kamikaze drones. And they're incredibly cheap, very accessible, quite easy to use. And that makes it very difficult to combat. You don't want to fire your £1 million missiles against something which is so cheap and small, but they are causing devastating casualties in Ukraine. So this is the UK basically adjusting to that and looking at the sort of new reality of threat that is being faced. It's also identifying who these threats might be coming from, specifically name-checking Russia, China, though it does say China is a sophisticated and persistent challenge. It's slightly diplomatically trying not to say threat, and also Iran and North Korea. And this is the same for group of countries which the head of the army identified last year as being what he described as an axis of upheaval. There seems to be sort of growing collaboration between those four powers. And this all comes ahead of the Strategic Defence Review, which is expected to come out on Monday.
And it's all going to feed into that, potentially, that announcement on Monday that we're hearing from John Healey about that 3% increase of GDP.
Yeah. A lot of this is about sending the right signal to our enemies, as it were, the likes of Russia, Iran, and actually trying to get that spending up. And it seems that John Healey, the Defence Secretary, is saying that defence spending will get up to 3% by the middle of the next decade. But it just wonders, is that enough? Other countries in Europe, Poland, for example, want to get up to 5% by next year. So even though we are making strides in the right direction, is it going to be enough? So, and I think you sort of see this in the context of Donald Trump and his threats to pull out and be that guarantor of security in Europe. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. There's a big NATO summit next month as well, so you just wonder whether there'll be another cash injection then just to send that message to the people such as the Kremlin that we want to get that message to.
NATO have said, look, it needs to be 5%.
Yeah,
Where does the money come from?
Exactly, and this is the headache, you know, which we've talked about already, and where, you know, what gets cut effectively to spend more on this. We saw the aid budget getting slashed to pivot towards defence. But yeah, Trump has been very open that he wants to see Europe spending 5%, and all we've said so far, our biggest pledge, is 3% by 2034, which is still a long time away. Trump has been quite hardline in the fact that Europe needs to sort of take charge of its own security more, even inviting Russia to invade NATO allies who don't spend what he thinks is enough on defence. So it is a serious headache, particularly in light of these growing technological threats.
OK, moving on to another big issue, particularly for voters. It's in the Telegraph, and it's France intercepting fewer boats that cross the Channel.
That's right,
Ryan.
So it seems to be that the figures of the interceptions from on the French side seem to have gone down in the last couple of years. It's around 38% so far for this year, down from the mid-40s. Now, I think all this should be sort of seen in the context of that we're giving France a lot of money. We're giving them £480 million over 3 years. And I think when we have tens of thousands of people coming over, making that perilous journey across the Channel, why aren't they doing more to actually intercept them? And perhaps why aren't we doing enough more in conjunction with the French to actually say that, you know, trying to find the means to actually stop them, whether that is more patrols against, you know, along the coastline, is it getting into those command centres to actually sort of taking joint command with them? And actually, I think also this will be seen alongside the decision to get rid of the Rwanda policy when this government came in. Now, this government are looking at offshoring centres such as in the Balkans, but is that going to be a big enough deterrent to actually stop people from making these journeys? And we've already had 12,000 come across this year. I think since it started in 2018, we're on about 150,000. So at the moment, nothing it seems to be working, but there is no silver bullet. It's going to be a whole host of things that's actually going to stop this.
Yeah, and there was this talk, but there was a reset with Europe. We saw the UK-EU summit that Keir Starmer was leading. One would have thought initiatives like that would help the French and the UK work together, work closely.
Yeah, I mean, as Ryan says, the French are getting quite a lot of money to do this, but you know, I've spent quite a lot of time in Calais, and certainly from the people that I've spoken to who were hoping to be the people on the boats crossing, they've said there isn't any policy like this that would deter them, that more policing effectively isn't going to turn them away. Because they feel that they, you know, need to build a new life in safety in the UK. And I think there is scepticism that just piling more money into things which clearly are not, as this proves, being effective, may not be the solution. And actually, I was speaking to someone in Calais not long ago saying that more police patrols on the beach have actually made smugglers change their tactics to pack more people in because they can't actually get as many boats across, which is causing more overcrowding and creating more risk. So, as Ryan says, there isn't a simple answer to this, but it's a huge headache for Keir Starmer. He made sort of sorting out the immigration system, as he framed it, a huge part of his election pitch, and sadly that doesn't appear to be working.
Yeah, it was the slogan, smash the gangs. I wonder how many gangs have been smashed since.
But they're very keen, and the government are very keen to actually show off how many arrests and charges and convictions, but they do seem few and far between. But Keir Starmer seems to think grasping it is actually further upstream. You actually do smash those gangs and try and get into those criminal gangs. But it's pretty tough, and it needs the whole of the police forces across Europe to actually get on top of it, and it's tough.
Indeed. Well, we're going to move over to the Times now. It's on the front page, and there's that symbolic gold key that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, handed over to Elon Musk because he's leaving the White House.
He is.
Physically, he says he'll still oversee that government efficiency department, but this is an end of an era for the Trump administration, I suppose.
It is the end of an era, and what a turbulent and dramatic and newsworthy era it's been. So, yeah, this is Trump's sort of farewell to Musk in the White House. He's giving him this gold key as a sort of ceremonial thing, and it should be said this is probably more of a send-off than lots of the employees who got sacked somewhat unceremoniously under Musk's cost-cutting exercise, sometimes with just emails saying don't come into work. Quite a contrasting picture from his work there. He's been in post in a bid to sort of cut back bureaucracy and spending at the federal government level. And I think the White House would say this was always supposed to be a temporary post. This was never, you know, going to go on forever, and this is all as planned. But I think, you know, it's been a pretty turbulent time for Musk. He's received some criticism for his actions, both political and sort of personal, during his time within the White House, but also his businesses he's had some headaches from. So Tesla and the electric car company has seen plummeting stock prices over the past few months, really suffered since Musk's been in the White House. Whether those two things are related is debatable, but I think some of this will be freeing him up to spend more time on his business exploits, basically, rather than his political ones.
I think what it says and what it signals is that it's not easy as you think in politics. You might be from the outside and think that you can come in and rearrange the wheel. It's not as easy, and that's what this potentially has displayed. But also interesting, Ryan, is how that could play out here in the UK. You know, Nigel Farage has echoed Elon Musk in that he would also cut and make cuts, and people shouldn't turn up to certain jobs. And it's interesting, isn't it, how that would seep through over here.
Yeah, when you're that outsider and you're that insurgent party coming in and looking at it in the broad sense, and you see newspaper headlines, and you see, you know, initiatives in government, whether it's diversity schemes, that will cost millions and millions. In the scheme of things, she's spending trillions and trillions of pounds. It's small change. So I think that's probably where Elon Musk has probably found it quite difficult and probably got out while the going was good. And this is the issue that Reform will find as well. Now, they're entering local government for the first time. They say they will strip back a lot of these schemes, which I'm sure they will. But how much money will it actually save? And then when you sort of scale that up to being in government, it's a whole new ball game again. So that's where the parallels, I think, lie between Reform and Elon Musk. And it'll be interesting to see how much sort of fat Reform can trim in the coming years.
OK, we only have 45 seconds left, but we're going to go to The Guardian. It's the front page, and it's Taylor Swift. She buys back the rights to all of her music, and this is after she lost her first 6 albums, didn't she? her music label selling that off.
Yeah, that was in 2019, and since then she's made a big sort of campaign, and there's been a lot of effort from her to buy back that music, so she owns her entire back catalogue. She posted a very heartfelt letter last night, sort of saying how proud she is and how excited and happy she is that this has happened. I think it's the Eras tour, which many people watching will have seen. It was the first billion-dollar tour, and I think that's probably enabled this purchase.
Yeah, I wonder if she'll be able to shake off the past. Who knows? Ryan, Molly,
very
thanks so
good.
much. Join us break.
Jubilation in the streets,